Okay, Monica.
Okay.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our ACLA meeting this week. And we are very blessed to have with us this evening a special guest speaker. This is Monica Tanner. She is a relationship coach and hosts Secrets of Happily Ever After podcast, which transforms marriages with simple communication, connection, conflict resolution, and commitment strategies. Her mission is to lower the divorce rate, that's great, and improve marital satisfaction, also great, through her engaging podcast and new book, Bad Marriage Advice. So she's not going to give us bad marriage advice, but she's going to tell us about it. Vibrant social media community and couples coaching practice. Monica's expert guidance has impacted thousands of couples by helping them ditch resentment and roommate syndrome and get back to living their happily ever after love story. She's married and has 4 children as of last count. So welcome, Monica, and you are muted at the moment, so you can feel free to unmute yourself.
There we go.
I'll let you take it away from here.
All right. And then I'm going to share my screen. I'm not very techy, so I'm warning you. It might take me a second to figure it out, but we will get there.
Get that.
So you're going to see all my tabs open because I do use a lot of tabs. And then let's see. All right. And then we'll see if we can get this on presenters. Full screen. See, center view. All right, got it. So can you guys see that?
Yes.
Wait, what does it look like? Can
Um,
you see like all kinds of things, or are my slides big and we're kind of small?
We just see we see the one main slide and we see the like a few slides underneath it, and to the right it's got the
Oh,
space for notes. So I don't know if this is really the presenter view.
yeah, I don't think it is. Let me try that again. Present full screen. Let's try
I'm
that
going
one.
to do present. Okay, there you
Is that
go.
better?
Yeah, now we got it on full screen.
Excellent. All right. Okay, so let me just make sure that I can click slides. Okay, so the name of this presentation is Stop Compromising in Your Sex Life. I want to teach you guys the FIRE method for couples, which is my 4-part framework to stop compromising and start collaborating so you can create a sex life that you love. Um, I just like to kind of start off with a few questions. How many of you are a little bit frustrated with the state of your sex life? When I created this, I was talking to a group that submitted concerns. So this may or may not be you guys, but you probably either feel like it's non-existent, a chore, or it's feeling really heavy. You're not talking about it because you don't want that huge eye roll or the fight that ensues every time you bring it up. Or you might feel resigned and hopeless that this is just as good as it's going to get. So you better learn to live with it. So a little bit about me. You introduced me great. This is my husband of 23 years. I just published this book actually yesterday, Bad Marriage Advice. We hit number top of the charts, #1 Amazon bestseller. So super excited about that. This is my family. I have 4 children. However, my oldest son is now married, so I have 5, including my cute strawberry blonde daughter-in-law there in the corner. And then I do host a top-rated podcast, Secrets of Happily Ever After. So that is a place where weekly I either have guests come on or I talk about different issues that face couples in marriage. With the purpose of all of this is to, like you said, lower the divorce rate, help couples really create their own happily ever after love story. So my goals for this presentation is for you to stop compromising in your sex life, to start creating the intimate, passionate connection that you actually want. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. To start creating the intimate, passionate connection that you actually want using my fire method, and then to be able to collaborate on a sex life that both of you love. Now we are talking about sex, but you can use these principles in any aspect of your marriage, whether you're talking about parenting, grandparenting, how often you see the in-laws, money, the actual collaboration skills that I'm going to teach you work in any different aspect of your marriage. So, your sexual beliefs are like a garden. And this is an idea that I learned from Emily Nagoski in her book, Come As You Are. I highly recommend that book. It's really, really good. But she talks about learning about sex and sexuality kind of like a garden. So when you're young, your primary caregivers, your parents, your leaders, your teachers, kind of plant things in your garden. So, and you don't have any control over what's planted in your garden. Just it's modeled for you. Typically, we grew up in households where we either don't talk about it or it's kind of shameful, or the idea is that we definitely don't do it, pre-marriage. And then you just figure it out once you're married. So there's lots of beliefs that get kind of planted in our garden. But the good news is once we grow up and we're in a loving, committed relationship, such as marriage, it is our responsibility then to take over. Many of us have to, start from scratch, but we get to plant in our garden what is nourishing for us and for our relationship. So that's the good news. So I want to start by talking about 5 common sexual myths that are poisoning your garden. Like they're the weeds that are choking out the good. Myth number 1, and I absolutely, this is a chapter in my book. I absolutely remember getting this advice when I was first getting married, but that a good wife keeps her husband satisfied. Like it's your responsibility as a wife to make sure that your husband is getting what he needs around this. The poison in that idea is that his needs always come first. What that creates is a lot of duty sex, resentment, and disconnection. The truth is that great sex happens when both partners feel free to choose and to be chosen. So a little story around this is I remember being young and not of marrying age, but I went to a friend's house and her mom was recently divorced. And I remember her telling us how she was so blindsided because she was always available for her husband around sex and he cheated on her anyways. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, well then, you've got to be really diligent about that. But what I've learned studying marriage and working with couples is that when a wife feels like that's her duty or her obligation, it doesn't create a very fulfilling sex life anyways. So that is definitely a big destructive myth. Myth number 2 is that good women don't need or ask for sex. So a lot of times we're taught growing up that, a good woman shouldn't have needs at all, but definitely not around sex, especially if you are, kind of a holy woman, like a righteous woman. You don't have needs or desires like that. The poison is that female desire is somehow shameful or wrong. What it creates is just this, kind of one-sided intimacy, suppressing of a woman's needs, a feeling of maybe I'm not living righteously enough when we do have desires. And we definitely do not talk about them. So the truth is your sexuality is a gift from God designed to bless your marriage. And so good women do want sex and they ask for it when they want it. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Myth number 3, men always want sex and women don't ever want sex. The poison is that reduces both genders to just stereotypes. It kind of feeds this idea again that it's woman's obligation to just sacrifice in that way to keep her man happy. It creates a lot of pressure, assumptions, missed connections. And the truth is that both partners have complex individual desires that deserve equal respect in the marriage. Number four, you can use sex to get what you want. I also remember feeling this, learning this somehow, whether it was modeled to me or just an idea that somehow was planted in my garden, that, a woman's, sexual wiles can be used to kind of control her spouse. The poison is that sex becomes transactional, not to mention all the other problems that creates, but it creates manipulation, power struggles, and a huge loss of intimacy. The truth is that healthy sex is about connection, not leverage. And myth number five, the more sex, the better your marriage. Poison there is quantity over quality. It creates a lot of performance anxiety, pressure, disconnection, disconnected encounters. The truth is that quality intimacy where both partners feel wanted trumps frequency every time. And a lot of times when I'm working with couples, some of the anecdotes or things that I prescribe to them is less frequency, higher quality, and less quantity for at least a little while. So now that we've talked about some of those poisonous weeds, let's get those out and plant something better. So I want to introduce the FIRE method to you. And this is kind of my 4-step framework for how to really address this in your marriage and create something that's really nourishing and loving for both of you. FIRE stands for face your false beliefs. I is initiate honest conversations. R is rewrite the rules. And E is engage consistently. Each of these are so, so important. So the F, face your beliefs, means that we get honest about the harmful messages that we absorbed growing up, the first part of our marriage and other relationships, wherever they came from, they somehow were planted in the garden. So what we want to do is identify what we've believed about marriage. So we want to really sit down and think about, how do I feel about sex? How do I feel about my body? How do I feel about my partner's body? How do I feel like this is addressed in our marriage? Do we talk about sex in our marriage? Maybe that's a false belief that you picked up along the way. So we need to just get really, really honest. We also need to notice where these beliefs came from. Did they come from, a parent or caregiver, a leader, a kind of a religious, cultural guideline? Where did we come up with these things that we believe? And then recognize how they're affecting our marriage and our sex life right now. So, I mean, do I believe any of those myths that I mentioned before? Is that something that comes up for me? And how is it affecting our connection and our intimacy? And then write them down, because we can't change what we don't acknowledge. So, if you don't write it down, it just kind of, it's not really solidified. You're not really acknowledging that this is something that you believe. So even if you burn this later or whatever, we should definitely write them down so that we can start to address them within ourselves and with our partner. This is just a testimonial of a wife that I worked with. She said, I believe that saying no to sex made me a bad wife. I learned it from my mom. I can see now that this belief was making me resentful and disconnected about sexual intimacy. So that's where she started. That was one of the beliefs that she wrote down, and we worked on it until we turned it, we were able to pluck that weed from her garden completely. So I stands for initiate honest conversations. This is so important. Now, what it means is that we start talking openly about sex, desires, and boundaries. Again, this is something that probably wasn't modeled. Even if our parents did this, which most of them probably didn't, we weren't around for it, right? They didn't loop us into the conversation. So this honest conversations about intimacy probably wasn't modeled for any of us. We've got to figure it out on our own. So the first step is to share with your partner what you've discovered about your own beliefs. Just get real, honest. Ask about your partner's experience and beliefs and where they came from, right? Like I had a couple I'll share with this group because it looks like some like a group that can handle it, where they fought so much about a certain act, and it was oral sex, and one of them was vehemently against it, and one of them was really, really curious about it and really wanted to try it. And so they were kind of at this standstill around this one topic. And when they started talking openly about it, the wife felt like, that this was some dirty, sexual act that came from porn or something really not on the up and up. And the husband was like, no, he used to play football, and it was something that his teammates experienced and always talked about. And it was something that he saved, for marriage. And it was just something that he really wanted to experience. And so once they understood where they both kind of were coming from, they were able to have an honest conversation about it and get to a better place where they understood each other and they felt better about it. And so they could experiment with it together where they both felt more comfortable about it. So discuss what you both actually want. How do you envision? This is a very vulnerable conversation. So you have to set up a safe space. It can't be when, you don't want to ambush one partner with this. Like you want to be able to set up a place, like a location, and both be in a good, open space where you can discuss these things. And then again, create safety for these vulnerable conversations. It is hard to show your partner, like, who you really are sexually. It can get vulnerable. So, but it's really important to just kind of breathe and be open and honest and very compassionate and understanding about who your partner is. This is another wife that I worked with. I want to talk about how we approach. Oh, she had a really hard time. Like we've never talked about this. They've been married for a very long time. And so she approached her partner with, I want to talk about how we approach intimacy. I've realized I've been saying yes out of obligation, and that is not fair to you. I think we can create something better together. And so when they started speaking openly and honestly about their intimate relationship, it got so much better. So then R is rewrite the rules. So you're looking at all of these beliefs that you've kind of grown up with, that you brought into the marriage, that you've kind of been operating on. And a lot of them, you'll probably see, this isn't blessing my marriage. Like this isn't actually what we want to create together. And the amazing thing about being married in any religion that I've studied or understood through my clients is that the prevailing idea is that what you do as husband and wife in the privacy of your own bedroom is up to you. So you get to create. Now, there's going to be different comfort levels and different ideas and different desires and opinions and preferences between the two of you, but you get to work together. You get to make the rules for your own relationship. So create new agreements based on mutual desire and respect for one another. You get to decide together what you want your sex life to look like. And that is a really exciting and fun part of marriage. So take advantage of it, right? Establish boundaries that honor both partners. Like you have to be able to say no without any consequences for you to be able to give an enthusiastic yes. So it's really, really important that you talk about what that looks like, how you can, still get your desires and your desires met, even when one or both of you is not in the mood. So focus on emotional connection alongside physical intimacy. So sex, it can look in a lot of different ways. I think culturally, when we think sex, we think penetration, orgasm for one or both partners, and that's it. Like that's the only way we see it. But physical intimacy comes in a lot of different forms. And as long as you're both prioritizing it, it can look in a lot of different ways. And again, you've got to initiate those honest conversations to get to what your idea of real physical sexual intimacy is going to look like in your relationship. So this was a husband and wife who came to the understanding after a lot of prodding and studying. What we do in our bedroom is between us, you, me, and God. It doesn't matter what our parents or leaders think of our choices. We get to decide what feels right for us together. So let's make it fun. And something really, really, really changed when they picked this up and when they decided, you know what? Like our parents are not in our bedroom with us, our leaders are not in our bedroom with us. We get to make this look like what we desire. And then they started having a really good time. E stands for engage consistently. This is not a one and done conversation. It is uncomfortable. However, it means make ongoing connection and communication a priority. I love to have my couples, especially my newlyweds, but couples from all ages, have something established like a Sex Talks Tuesday. Like once a week, you go on a walk or you go on a drive. Usually it's not in the bedroom. I like to take it out of the bedroom, you don't want to kind of taint the place where it typically happens. So you want to go somewhere. And then I do find that it works better if you are parallel. So if you're walking in the same direction or driving in the same direction and not like looking into each other's eyes awkwardly, it's easier to have these more uncomfortable conversations. Holding hands, taking a walk is such a great way to do it, but do it consistently, like regular check-ins about your sexual relationship. How's this going? Are you enjoying it? What would you want to see more of? What would you like to see less of? I also love to recommend to my newlyweds, there's lots of games that you can play where you can kind of teach each other how you like to be touched, like the different pressures, what smells you like how to engage all the senses in your experiences like that. I also love to suggest that you plan for 2 nights a week. One night is the wife chooses everything about the experience. They initiate, they set up the experience, they get to have everything they like their way. And then on a different night, the husband gets to do the same. So you get to learn kind of, and on the night that's not your night, you're open to the things that your spouse wants to try, the way they like it, those types of things. So you get to experiment and you get to learn about each other on each other's nights. So invest in emotional intimacy outside the bedroom. I'm sure this goes without saying. You know, you can't expect to not be intimate with each other throughout the day, and then all of a sudden it's going to be this amazing experience when it's time for sexual intimacy. You've got to be constantly feeding that emotional intimacy. Be curious about each other's changing needs and desires. As we age, things change. And so it's really important to, again, consistently have these ongoing conversations and then celebrate progress and navigate setbacks together. So, that's just communication and compassion and love. So this is Greg and Emily. We have weekly conversational sex talks about our intimacy, and we're both working on the emotional connection that makes physical intimacy feel more natural. So the skill that I often teach is collaboration. So, this idea that sex and marriage require compromise is something that I work against. It's in my book. I talk about compromise. I teach uncompromising intimacy. So I feel like this idea of compromise is very, very outdated. This thought that I give a little and you give a little, we meet in the middle, and nobody actually gets what's really important to them, I think is not necessary. So what I teach is collaboration, and collaboration takes more work, but it's infinitely more worth it. So when we collaborate, it's actually you share with me, I share with you. We actually take what's most important to both of us and we create something that neither of us could have come up with on our own. That's collaboration. So, how we do this is we sit down and we have those hard conversations, especially when we're not agreeing or we're not seeing eye to eye. We want to get really curious about what is my position on this? Where did it come from? And why do I feel so strongly about this particular issue? Then we want to get really curious about our partner. What is my partner's position on this or opinion about this? Where does it come from and why do they feel so strongly about it? Then you get another turn, like what are my reservations about your position and what are your reservations about my position? Once we have all of that information out on the table, then we have something to work with. Then we get to be creative and figure out and cooperative and figure out how do we create something that both of us really benefit from. And here's the thing I like to tell couples. It's nothing is permanent. So if you decide to move your family across the country and you've collaborated on it and you decided this is going to be the best for our family and it turns out that it's not, then guess what? We live in a world where you can just move them right back. Nothing is permanent. Then you start this process of a collaboration over again and you have more data to work with. Now, again, this works with something as simple as what are we going to do for dinner to as complicated as where are we going to live, raise our children, do for work, how are we going to educate them? Like you can collaborate on anything big or small. It just requires that you get curious about yourself, curious about your partner, and that you're willing to be open and honest with each other and then get creative. There's so many resources now. Let's see. Again, this is my equation. Curiosity plus creativity equals cooperation and collaboration. Again, so much better than compromising. All right, so what to do now? Choose one area of the FIRE method, have one honest conversation with your partner, and remember that you're creating the intimate partnership that you both deserve. It's not, again, it's not a one and done thing. You've got to go through that FIRE method over and over and over again. You have to be willing to be very consistent to create what it is that you both really want. And again, it changes through time. It's not a one and done. Your sexuality is a gift designed to bless and strengthen your marriage. It is from God. God created us to have joy in our bodies. Embodied sexuality is part of the plan. So we might as well create something that we love together. It's time to tend your garden together, which is so cool. We get to do the work together. We get to decide what goes in our garden together. We get to tend and weed and benefit from the fruits of our labors together. So that's why this is so important. So in closing, we're at 6:30, so we can have a long discussion about this. You can find more about me by finding me at Monty Talks Marriage on Instagram. You can listen to the Secrets of Happily Ever After podcast. You can learn more about working with me at my website, monicatanner.com. And you can learn more about my book, Bad Marriage Advice, at badmarriageadvice.com or just directly on Amazon. So I will stop sharing here. I did that faster than I thought I would. And open it up for questions, whatever you guys are thinking.
All right. Thank you very much for that presentation. I see one hand raised by Fred. Fred, do you want to unmute yourself and
Yes. Oh, okay. So before we start talking about the birds and the bees, which I think nobody ever got that I know ever got really well educated in that, but I really want to endorse you. I really appreciate the way you view your oldest son's wife as a new member of the family, as your daughter.
Mhm.
Because where I'm from, and I'm in Brazil, and these people are so hung up on protocol. I mean, they make a big deal of your position. Like they have a word for a different language, but are you the brother-in-law or the brother, sister-in-law, mother-in-law? It's crazy. And
Yeah.
there's this idea that I'm sure everyone's heard this. You're not when you get married, you're not just marrying another person. You're marrying a family, and that's really beautiful. So I really appreciate your insight, your whole approach in that way.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, she married my son. She's one of my kids now. I call them my kids, you know. I say we're gonna go visit my adult married kids. So definitely, definitely. She doesn't call me mom or anything, but I definitely feel like she's one of my children now. She will be forever as long as she's part of our family. So yeah, she will be the mother of my grandchildren. So gotta definitely invest in that relationship.
Right. Paulo, you're muted. You're muted now.
I have a question. First of all, thank you very much. This is this is brilliant. It's amazing.
Oh, good.
Um, I didn't understand how the fire. How does that go?
How the fire goes?
Yeah, I mean, how do you use that technique? What I didn't understand how you do it.
Yeah, let me get back to that. See if I can find it again. And we'll go back to that acronym. I'll tell you a secret. I like to type into ChatGPT, like, this is what I want to teach. Can you come up with an acronym for it? And ChatGPT is so good at that. So whenever I present anything to any type of group, I always like put my outline in and ask ChatGPT to come up with a really good acronym. And it always does. It always comes up with
Mm,
something so applicable. And it's just like the best because you can remember fire. Like we want to create sexual intimacy that's like a fire. And it's
mm,
such a great metaphor because fire is tricky. You got to get oxygen. You got to give it the right amount of fuel, and you've got to build it correctly. So it's just like your sexual relationship, but FIRE stands for face your false beliefs. So we started, that was what I started with, is basically really thinking about what was modeled for you. What did you take in? What do you believe about sex, intimacy, your body, the body of the opposite sex? Like, it's really important. We have to be able to acknowledge things to be able to change them or work with them. And so facing those false beliefs is really important. Getting curious about, what do I believe about these things? What are my desires? How have I been made to feel about this? My husband came from a very shaming household. And so he thought, he thought that sexual arousal was really, really bad, that something was wrong with him or he was doing something wrong if he ever felt that feeling of arousal. And so that was something that we really had to root out, especially parenting our own children. I celebrated. I was like, oh, that means your body is working correctly. We want to understand, arousal. It's something that God gave us, and it's really awesome in a marriage relationship. We want to be careful with it. Now we want to understand it. But we definitely don't want to shame it or anything like that, because that means that your body is working correctly and that you'll be able to have children and join with God and create life. So, you definitely don't want to shame it. So that's an example of some of those false beliefs that some of us were taught or modeled to us, right? And then initiate honest conversations. Again, it's really hard for us when we haven't really been modeled or taught how to talk about these uncomfortable, vulnerable topics with each other. A lot of couples, I have a lot of couples who've been married 40 years. And they've never had a conversation about their sexual intimacy. It was like something they just kind of did because they thought they had to. That's how you make babies. And then that was like the end of their conversation about it. And so being able to talk to your partner about your desires, about your ideas, about your opinions and your preferences is just of utmost importance. Rewriting the rules. Again, probably not many of us were raised with, you know, really open, honest conversations about what the rules and guidelines were about sex, except for don't do it until you're married. And then after that, anything goes. But there were probably some rules depending on how we grew up, what religious backgrounds we have. What are those rules around sexuality? But the reality is that one of the coolest parts, I think, of marriage is that as husband and wife in partnership with God, we get to create our own rules around sexual intimacy. What works for us as a couple and what works for me and my husband is going to be completely different than what works for you and your spouse, and on and on and on. Our sexual templates are so different. And so if we will commit to understanding ourselves, to accepting ourselves, and being able to share ourselves with our partners, we can create such a beautiful relationship. And then E, engage consistently. Like I said, it's not a one and done conversation. This is something that we continue to talk about throughout time because it changes. When we're in the baby making stage, it's different from postpartum, and it's different from, aging and menopause and, all of those things. We're going to go through different stages and seasons of life where our sexual relationship is going to look and feel different. And so we have to always be willing to show up and have those uncomfortable conversations so that we can continually create what works and is pleasurable and fun and intimate for both of us. So that's fire. That's how we create fire, passion and intimacy throughout our lifespan. But great question. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? I'd like to, commend you for taking this on because, first of all, it's a topic that, as you implied there, that it's not really discussed much, right? So people don't hear about it from their parents. They don't hear it from their preachers. And they might hear something at school, but some of the things you heard at school, better not to hear, right? Or they don't really teach it the right way either. So you've got a big task, and it actually makes me think all the way back to Genesis. So in the first chapter, Genesis, God, as you said, this is a blessing from God, right? God created us this way to have sexual relationship, and obviously He must have created us to experience a lot of joy from it too, right?
Yeah.
But, right, so in the beginning, he says, he tells Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply. That's in the first chapter. But by the time you get to the third chapter, something happens and they're covering their lower parts and they're ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
So this has kind of been, since that time, it seems like this kind of sexuality and shame has been associated with human life. But God wants us to live in a marriage that, in a blessed marriage that can be without shame, I believe. And I think you're trying to address that in a great way.
Yeah. And what strikes me about Genesis that I absolutely love is He did command them that the man should not be without the woman and the woman without the man, right? He cast them out of the Garden of Eden together. And He said, by the sweat of thy brow, you should live all the days of your life. And so it's not going to be easy, but it's absolutely worth it. Like, I think God was saying nothing that produces joy in this life is going to be easy. You're going to have to pull a lot of weeds. You're going to have to work until the ground. But you will be so richly blessed if you will put in the effort. And so I think that about our sexual relationship as husband and wife is we get to do it together. We get to work until the ground together, and we get to create that nourishing, beautiful, replenishing garden together. And that I find is such a great blessing.
Thank you. Yeah, we often discuss and have people talking about marriage because it is such an important part of life. It's important that we as individuals have a relationship with God, but God created us to exist as families, right? And the husband and wife relationship and that collaboration, cooperation, that union that we can create, true union, right? Not just on paper, not by obligation, is very critical. I definitely agree with that. And very grateful to you for bringing these points to us. Bergie, do you have any? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
I think Rich, yes, I think there's a
Oh,
question.
yeah, Rich, go.
I when I was listening, I thought, oh, I could invite my children, but I didn't know what you're talking about. So anyway, I heard and really wanted to my children to, you know, participate this kind of thing because I have 3 children. One is son, he already have a baby, but they had a problem because wife had a little illness, so they had to train themselves. But 2 girls, they have been together over 10 years, but they don't have a children. So, but their relationship, as long as we know, they are doing great. But it's sexual life or all those areas, how much they are really intimately talking about it or not. That kind of stuff we can't really ask directly. And then if we ask, when is your baby coming? That becomes so pressure to them.
They don't,
right?
they don't
Yeah.
love that, right?
Yeah, they don't like
love
it. So,
that.
yeah, that's why I totally this kind of lecture or class or something that if they have a chance, they may have different idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so important to be able to address sexual intimacy like this in marriage. I love working with young couples, especially before they get married, like in premarital counseling. We talk a lot about sex, and I have a lot of games and exercises and things that they can do in the newlywed stage to kind of learn about this, to kind of open up those lines of communication. Because otherwise, like I said, I work with couples that have been married 30, 40 years and they've never had a conversation about it. But also the principles that I teach on collaboration and cooperation and things like that, they can be used to talk about money. They can be used to talk about, where you're going to live, how you're going to educate, how you're going to parent, all of those things. So, I mean, the concepts are the same, but it is so important to know how to have those tricky conversations. We joke about the couples who go to dinner and don't have anything to talk about because they've been married a long time and they know the topics that they just don't bring up because they're too hard to talk about with each other. And so those are the couples that end up in my office with a lot of resentment because they've been through years and years and years of not talking about things that are really important. So, and sex is almost always one of those topics.
One good thing, Richiko, is Bergie is recording this. So once we have the recording, you can share with your kids. You can share the link. At least they can watch, even though they don't have a chance for question and answer, at least not in this situation, but
Okay.
at least watch.
This part is not recorded, you mean?
No, it's recorded. Yeah.
Not recorded. Okay.
Yeah. Since we introduced Monica, so the whole presentation and the question and answer, plus of course we have access to Monica's website and her book, other publications, her podcast.
Yeah, social media. You can always reach out to me. I answer everything. I don't have anyone that does any of my question and answer just because I deal with such a tender topic. So I've never hired anyone you're always talking to me, whether you email me or message me. It's always me answering you.
You don't have a call center where you hire
That would be great, but
minimum wage. Can you answer these questions? That wouldn't be easy, would it? Okay, Fred's got his hand up. Okay.
Yeah, interesting to me. The title of your book is what? Bad Marriage Guidance is somehow is a bestseller. Bad
Yeah.
marriage advice. People want bad marriage. How'd you come up with that title? What's that book about?
You know, I guess I didn't. I've talked so much today. I don't remember what I've said to who, but the way this book came about was my son, when he was 21 years old, this past January, came to us, my husband and I, and said, "I met the girl I want to marry. I'm going to ask her to marry me. I'm so in love." And we kind of panicked a little bit because he's 21 and she's 21, and we thought, "Oh my gosh, you guys are so young." And then we thought, well, we got married when we were 22, so we don't have like much of a leg to stand on. But as a marriage expert and somebody who works with couples all the time, I thought, oh my gosh, there's so much I need these kids to know. And so I sat down to kind of write him a letter about like the things that I wanted him to watch out for and things like that. And it just turned into this book. It was like almost like I woke up every morning and I was like, okay, I remember when my husband and I were getting married, somebody told us not ever to go to bed angry, and I lost so much sleep about it and made me miserable. So, I wanted to warn them about that advice. And sure enough, they got that advice from a lot of well-meaning, wonderful humans. But, there's a better way. So the book is called Bad Marriage Advice: Debunking Myths That Will Make You Miserable and What to Do Instead. And so there's 15 pieces of bad marriage advice in here. Things that like don't sweat the small stuff, learn how to compromise, happy wife, happy life. That one I hate. Don't go to bed angry. If they love you, they'll just know. There'll be time to spend on your relationship after you raise the kids. The one that we talked about in this video of a good wife keeps her husband satisfied. All of those things that like literally people told me that when I was getting married. Or I work with clients who are operating on this terrible advice and it makes them miserable. And so in this book, I talk about the pieces of bad marriage advice, and then I tell you why it's bad marriage advice, because I'll get some pushback on some of them. Some of them won't be, people will be like, no, of course you've got to compromise. No, I don't agree. And then I teach communication skills. So the through line of every piece of bad marriage advice is it's going to create lazy communication. So if you actually live by that idea of happy wife, happy life, well, congratulations to the husband. They never have to communicate their opinions because they just go with whatever the wife wants, right? Or don't go to bed angry. It's like, well, we're not going to communicate effectively at 2 o'clock in the morning. So, it's like if the advice encourages you to communicate less or not to communicate as well, then it's bad advice. And so this book is basically filled with better ways to communicate the things that you want and desire. Oh, it's like don't sweat the small stuff. That's like telling you to push down your feelings and don't communicate about until it's like you're super resentful and it's a big weed that you have to deal with now, right? But we want to deal with things when they're seeds. So learn how to communicate well about the small things so that you don't stuff them down until they become these massive weeds that you have to deal with, right? So that's how that came about.
I think that's a bold, maybe a little risky, but in a way, but a bold title because it catches people's attention.
Yeah.
Why would I buy a book with bad marriage advice? But then people get curious.
What is that bad marriage advice?
Why are you writing a book with bad marriage advice? But then quickly you figure out what it is.
It was funny because I came up with the idea and then I was like, the website's available. Like why is like I looked it up on Amazon. I'm like, why has nobody written this book yet? Like, so anyways, it was kind of fun.
Because everybody's writing books about good marriage advice, what they consider good marriage advice.
Yeah.
Nobody thought of writing a book called Bad Marriage Advice.
Yep.
So that was very clever. That's good. Wait, anybody else? Bergie, anything?
Well, I really appreciate this lesson tonight. It's probably a little bit difficult for more questions, looks like. But maybe, Monica, you have something we can come up with for 10 more minutes. Maybe you talked about games or something. I'm sure you have something you could share in addition, since looks like we don't have more questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to share some games that are fun.
Yeah.
That I share with my newlywed couples, my premarital counseling. One game is called the 3 minute game. And so one partner gets to touch the other partner for 3 minutes. And you get to be in charge. So you get to be in charge of the touch for 3 minutes. It's non-sexual touch. So it's like it'll be like a back massage or a foot massage or rubbing or tickling your arm. But for 3 minutes, you do whatever your partner asks you to do. And then you switch 3 minutes. So we call that the 3 minute game. So you just kind of go back and forth and you learn about the different kinds of touches that your partner likes. So do they like to be scratched faster or slower? Do they like more pressure or less pressure? Do they like you to use your fingertips or your nails or the palm of your hand? My husband has really, really big hands, and I love it when he just kind of, you know, I've taught him the right kind of pressure to just like how to hug me and how to caress and use his big hands to make me feel really safe, right? And so, but we've learned that through the 3 minute game. So that's a really good one. Like I said, taking turns kind of planning intimacy for the night was something that somebody taught us right when we were newlyweds. Actually, I think we'd already had our first son. We went to this retreat and we left, he was a baby. And the presenter talked about having each of you having one night of the week that you were in charge of everything around intimacy. So that means you choose the playlist, you choose how the lights are, you choose the scents that are going to be in the room. Like sex is or sexual intimacy is a very sensual experience. And so it's good to kind of learn what you like with all of your senses. What do you like to hear? What do you like to taste? What do you like to feel? What do you like to see? When you're being sexually intimate. And so, on my night, I get to choose like if I like the lights off or if I like the lights on, or do we want to have a bath together first, or do I want to be taken out to dinner first or whatever? Like I get to plan intimacy one night of the week, and then my husband gets to plan it the other night of the week. And guess what? Those nights look very different. Right? Like how I like to lead into it and experience it is very different from how my husband likes to lead into it and experience it. So that's really, really fun to learn. And we just try to stay really open and curious about each other and ask questions when it's appropriate. Another thing I love to discuss, I think is really interesting, and it changes throughout time. Like if we've been married for 23 years and we've gone through lots of seasons, but how do you like to be comforted when you're stressed or when you're frustrated or when you've just had a really long day? What kind of touches are really comforting and loving to you? And so like for me, I just really like to be completely engulfed in my husband's arms. Like sometimes I'll say, lay with me. And like I've had a long day and I just want to snuggle and be spooned in a certain way. And we, have learned about that. My husband, completely different when he's very stressed. He wants something completely different. And so being able to talk about, those kind of needs and desires is really, really important. When instead of going to bed angry with each other, my husband, if we're like nitpicking and frustrated with each other late at night, my husband can just turn over and go to bed. He's very securely attached and that works for him. For me, it was like a huge punch in the face. I felt very abandoned. It was very hard for me to go to bed angry, not only because I got that advice and I thought, we can't go to bed angry. What are we doing here? But also I have a lot of abandonment and attachment needs, right? And so once we talked through all of that, I explained to my husband that for me to be able to calm my nervous system and go to bed, it's really helpful if he'll say, I love you. I'm not going anywhere, but right now I'm too tired to discuss this. Can we talk about it in the morning? And if he'll just say something like that, I'm like, okay, everything's okay. I can go to bed. And I learned tragically, after losing a lot of sleep for the first 10 years of our marriage, I learned that if I just go to sleep, my husband always apologizes in the morning, whether it was his fault or not. He always rolls over, like wraps me in his arms and says, I am so sorry. I was being a jerk last night, or I'm so sorry. I don't even know what happened. Do you want to talk about it? Right. And so that literally was like how I learned that my husband was even capable of apologizing because I'm a fixer. I was very anxiously attached in the beginning. And so if my husband and I would fight, I would always apologize long before he had a chance, because I wanted to fix it. And it wasn't until I learned how to go to bed angry. So I had to ask for what I wanted, which is him to say that thing. And then he would say that, and then I could go to bed angry. And then I learned, oh my gosh, my husband does apologize. That's amazing. So, so yeah, I mean, it's like marriage is so fun because we get to learn these things about each other. And so I just encourage you to have these conversations. Like if you feel like your spouse is acting irrational about sex or anything else, get curious. Like instead of being like, my spouse is so crazy, why do they always react like that? It's like, hey, I notice that when we're upset with each other late at night, you get really agitated. What is that about? Like, I want to learn more about what's happening for you. Like, let's talk about it, right? So, always leading with curiosity is always going to go over better. And then learning how to make requests is really important. That's chapter 2 in my book. I talk about it. And I think it's one of the most important skill sets that you can learn in marriage is how to make requests and to just say, like, I would love it if instead of just going right to sleep, if you would just say, I love you, I'm not going anywhere. Let's talk about this in the morning. And then I'll feel better, right? Like that is a request that eventually I learned how to make, and it made everything so much better. So we're at about a minute. That's a wrap up of things that I think are really important. Oh, Frederick has a question.
Brady.
Oh, what I really like about your approach is that it's interesting that we're partners in life. The idea that with this whole approach is you're talking a lot about sex, but it applies to everything we do. So I really like that.
Thank you.
Well, the sexual intimacy is like the fountain of love and life and everything. So if that is working well, it's really like the fire you said. When that has fire, then it will impact all the other aspects in your life. And it's very foundational. So I really appreciate you had been sharing with us about your your lesson you have learned and worked through to share with us. And I feel we have in our church many young couples. This could be very beneficial for them. Instead of struggling for 20 or 30 years, why don't make it right in the beginning, right?
Yes, yes. I
Have,
love
have that
newlywed sessions.
conversation.
Yes.
Have that conversation.
So important.
Yeah. We are very blessed that we could have you tonight. And I recommend that everybody order that book. I ordered it yesterday.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Well, as Alan, do you have any final words?
No, I just want to thank Monica for
Yeah.
taking the time. It's a very noble thing to get into because it's something that is much needed, right? It's like you said, it's something not that everybody deals with, but not so many people are talking about it or giving really good advice about. So
Yeah.
thank you once again for coming tonight.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me and being such a great audience.
Thank you very much.
Best day for you, and pray that things can really blossom in your work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Yep. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You.
Bye, everybody.